Tell me. Your own was more expensive and you offered more. The one on, the one you told us last week?
For 200.
Tamara came down and then she walked out. She was with Justin. Yeah, Justin. Not Jessica.
Just telling me if you see me, they'll lend you 205. Yeah, from the corner too. You don't have no neighbors on the side. And then the back there, privacy feature. Yeah, I like that. I like that.
I know my mother.
I think it's nice, dude. That what you tell you, bien fresca. Yeah, right now they're market. Oh. Can you see this?
Welcome back, members of the jury. Hope you had a pleasant weekend. There wasn't a moment that went by this weekend where I didn't contemplate and think about how much myself, and I know the staff feels the same way, I know the lawyers in this case feel the same way, how much we appreciate your service. So thank you again for your service. Let me know if there's anything you need during the course of this trial. If you need a break at any time, don't hesitate. All right. With that state, are you ready to call your next witness?
Your Honor, the state's ready. The state calls Justin Rodriguez.
All right, so you can have a seat. I'm going to swear you in.
Yes, sir.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this trial will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir, I do.
You can lower your hand. You may need to approach the microphone, make sure everybody can hear you, okay?
Yes, sir.
Can you introduce yourself to the jury and spell your name for the court reporter, please?
Yes, my name is Justin Rodriguez, Justin, and the last name Rodriguez, Rodriguez.
I'm going to give you a couple of instructions, okay?
Yes, sir.
The lady in front of you is taking a record. She's a court reporter.
Okay.
Make sure that all the questions are asked in their entirety before you respond. You can only get one voice at a time.
Yes, sir.
Also, if you see one side, one of the attorneys on either side stand up at any moment and object to anything, do not answer the question that was asked until we advise you whether or not you can, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. State.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Rodriguez, would you please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
I'm Justin Rodriguez. I'm currently GM for Rent-A-Tire Rent-A-Will.
And how long have you worked for Rent-A-Tire?
6+ years.
6+ years?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to take you back to November 20th and 21st of 2016. Were you working for Rent-A-Tire at that time?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
When did you begin work? You said 6+ years, so what would you recall what year you started with Rent-A-Tire?
I would say back in 2014.
Okay. And back in, say, the fall of 2016, what were your duties and job position at Rent-A-Tire?
I was a GM, general manager at the location of Bandera and Woodlawn.
And you recall the address of the location?
813 Bandera Road.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Rodriguez, I'm going to show you a photograph. Do you recognize what's shown in this photograph?
Yes, that's the location of 813 Bandera Road.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time the state moves to introduce State's Exhibit number 151.
No objection.
It's admitted.
Okay. Mr. Rodriguez, looking at State's Exhibit number 151, you said this was the location where you worked back in the fall of 2016. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
As the general manager.
Yes, ma'am.
And the location 813 Bandera Road, is that here in San Antonio, Texas?
It is here in San Antonio, Texas. Yes, ma'am.
And what part of town is this located?
I would say roughly the west side.
guess early fall, September of 2016, did an individual come in to purchase or rent to own some wheels?
Yes.
Okay. And an individual by the name of Otis Tyrone McKane?
Yes.
Okay. How many times did you see or speak to Otis Tyrone McKane?
Every Friday.
Okay. So if you tell the jury when he came in and what transaction he made with Rent-A-Tire.
Sure. Every Friday he would come in and make his weekly payment that was due on the rims and tires that he initially got from us.
Okay. And do you see Otis Tyrone McKane in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Would you please point to him and identify what he's wearing and where he's seated?
Seated to the left of me, wearing a gray shirt, dark gray tie with dark pants, black shoes.
All right. And if there's four individuals sitting at this table, where is he seated?
Very last seat.
Okay. And for the record, you've identified the defendant, Otis Tyrone McKane?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been introduced into evidence as State's Exhibit number 36.
Okay.
Looking at this packet, State's Exhibit number 36, can you tell the jury what this first page is?
That's gonna be our 90-day CMS cash notice, just to let the customer know that they understand that you have 90 days to pay off the account, the price, the date when it's the 90 days is over, and the date they originally got the account, and of course the signature.
Okay, so whose signature is shown on the page, the 90-day same as cash notice?
That would be on Otis McKane.
Okay, and then the date of September 6th of 2016, that particular date is what, sir?
That's the initial day that he initially started the agreement with us. We installed the rims and tires into his vehicle.
Okay, so the day that he came in and signed the contract with you, picked out the rims and wheels and signed the contract?
Yes, ma'am.
And then the cash price, what does that mean, cash price?
Basically, cash price, he got the price, the wheels and tires for $1,350. He had 90 days to pay that off.
Okay, so $1,350.96?
Correct, yes, ma'am.
And then the time frame that he had, you said the 90 days would expire on December 5th of 2016?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And then looking at the second page, the rental purchase agreement, let's start at the top. You said it's Rent-A-Tire number 12, is that right?
Yes, ma'am, that's the store number 12.
Okay, so each individual Rent-A-Tire has a number associated with it?
Has our location number, correct. Yes, ma'am.
And then it has the address that you just showed the jury on State's Exhibit number 151 at 813 Bandera Road. So can you tell the jury the date of the contract? Do you see that up there?
The date of the contract is September 6, 2016.
Okay, and again, there's a customer number, a home number. What is looking at State's Exhibit 36, what is the individual's name who's the lessee and the renter?
The lessee and renter would be Otis McKane.
And what is his address?
1236 La Bramo.
And where would you have gotten that address from? Is that...
That would be either his application or his driver license.
Okay, and did y'all receive a driver's license with the application? Are you required?
We're required to have a state ID or a Texas driver license.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And would you have one in this case?
Yes, ma'am, we do.
For Otis McKane?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then looking underneath, it has a home phone. It says home phone, work phone, and there's a number of 210-980-5417. Is that correct for the home number?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then tell the jury, if you can, about the description of property that Mr. McKane was purchasing or renting to own.
It'd be 22-inch Veloci rockets with some 22-inch tires.
Okay. And then there's also some sort of battery pack. Is that correct? That came with it?
Yes, ma'am. We usually give the customers a battery pack to stay in their vehicle, so in case they have any type of emergency, if that repair or anything like that, they can use that machine.
Okay. And then underneath, there's some writing here, and it looks like some initials and then some numbers. Tell us about that.
Yes, ma'am. That was those are actually my initials. So it was a wrong description on the tire wise. They weren't wind run tires. They were actually Nexen tires. That's why I put TR Nexen with my initials, and the size of the tire was a 235/30/22. That was on it.
So what you're doing here is you're correcting what you had scratched, or what you had drawn a line through above on the 4 tires.
Correct.
Okay. And then the stars here, can you tell us about the stars that are associated with the actual rims?
Those were the stars to actually make sure that those are actually the rims that we did put on Mr. McCain's car.
Okay, so you're just confirming that these particular rims are put onto the car.
Correct.
Okay, and then there's also serial numbers. And each one has a unique serial number, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and what is the purpose of the serial number?
To keep track of in case a customer, tries to pawn the rim and tire or something like that, we have our access to that.
Okay.
So we can prove that it's ours. It belongs to us.
Okay, so how do you prove that it belongs to Rim-A-Tire?
We either have a label, a marking inside the rim, or an etching outside of the wheel.
Okay, and so when you said we have a marking, a sticker, or the actual etching, what do you etch? If it is in fact an etching, what do you etch inside the rim? Or the wheel, right?
Of course, the wheel, yes. It'll be the location of the store, the brand model of the wheel, and then the phone number to our location.
Okay, and so also, would you, I guess, engrave the unique serial number?
Yes, we do. And then the back of the wheel or inside the wheel.
Okay, so each of these 4 wheels would have a different serial number etched in, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then the customer signs the form, is that correct? Signs the
He initials the,
purchase
yes, ma'am.
initials it. We can see it here and then also below, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then there's a back page to that, to the contract, and then it's signed here.
Yes, ma'am.
And who signed that?
Otis McKane.
And are these being signed in your presence, sir?
In my presence, yes.
Back on September 6th of 2016?
Yes, ma'am.
And then again, the contract addendum. We look at the top. And then again, 2 more initials. And then it has the make and the vehicle year, make and model, and a VIN number,
Yes, ma'am.
license plate. What is the vehicle year, make and model?
That's a 2011 Mitsubishi Galant,
Okay. And the color?
black in color.
Okay, and can you read the VIN number, please?
The VIN number is going to be 3N1B C1CP 3B L996399.
Okay, and what is the license plate number?
License plate is going to be HJV2098.
And then it has the expiration date, the signature of Otis McKane, as you've testified, and then the date again that the contract
Correct.
was initiated.
Yes, ma'am.
And then there's obviously a default agreement as well, the next page that is signed, and a right to enter property, again with the VIN number, the license plate number, the color of the vehicle, the make and model, Mitsubishi Galant, license number HJV2098. Right, and then the 2 signatures on this page belong to him.
Yes, ma'am.
Who do they belong to?
Otis McKane.
And then the manager's agreement at close. And then another initial and signature, and whose initial and signature is that?
Otis McKane as well.
The same Otis McKane that you've identified before?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then the customer order form. Who fills out the top part of this form here?
The customer is required to fill out the form.
Okay, so in this case, Otis McKane filled out the top portion under customer information and also automobile information,
Yes, ma'am.
or part of it, right? The
Mhm.
part that's in that's not in blue.
Correct.
All right, and then also the personal references, who filled that out?
The customer as well, Mr. Otis McKane.
Okay. So he indicates, looking at this, okay, his address again at 1236 Lombrano. Let's see, Social Security number, email, his cell number 210-980-5417, date of birth, has his job. It says employer, labor max, crew member, the work address, and it has his email of, looks like, is it Otis McKane at gmail.com. It's kind of hard to make out. And then it has, again, the car information that he filled out, his license plate number, VIN number, 2011 Mitsubishi Galant, black in color. The references, Sandra McCain, Greg, Simone, Billy, Kristen. Okay, and again, his signature at the bottom, is that right?
Yes, ma'am, and the date.
And then there's some handwriting on the back of that same page. And whose handwriting would this be?
That would be my collectors at the time, verifying the application.
Okay, and so these names and numbers, are those names and numbers of whom?
That other references, because apparently the other references didn't answer, so we require more references to talk to somebody.
Okay. And then LM is left message, is that fair
Correct.
to say?
Yes, ma'am.
And then another page of that same rental form, the customer order form, and then bottom has some more references, is that right?
Yes, ma'am. Those were verified references. Either they're not completely fit out, it's because they didn't answer. Okay. So that's why we require more references.
Okay, and so it has different people's names, but it has two of them. The top two, Kelly and Greg, live on Lombrano. Kristen lives on Lombrano, like friend, couple weeks, frequency every day. Are y'all trying to call these individuals?
Yes, we call each individual to verify the information from the customer to make sure it's accurate.
Okay, and you testified that there's also a driver's license that y'all are required to receive?
Correct.
Okay, and you make a copy of that and keep it in your file?
Correct, we do.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez, looking at what's shown in the rent-a-tire packet, State's Exhibit number 36, obviously that's a black and white
Correct.
black and white copy,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
Of
It sure is.
Mr. McCain's driver's license?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 152. Is this appear to be the exact same driver's license but in color?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Your Honor, this time the state moves to introduce State's Exhibit number 152.
That's admitted.
So taking a look at State's Exhibit number 152. This appears to be the exact same driver's license that y'all copied, except it's in, this one's in color. Is
Yes,
that
ma'am.
correct, sir?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
And then you require an insurance card.
Yes, ma'am. We require the insurance card to make sure the car does have insurance.
And so that was provided to you by Mr. McCain as well?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
For the 2011 Mitsubishi Galant?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then another document from the insurance company?
Yes, that we require that we use that one as a proof of residency, like a proof of bail.
Oh, I see, that they in fact live there. So you received a copy of their driver's license, copy of their insurance, and then some sort of letter or mail that they've received at their home to show proof of residency?
Correct, yes, ma'am.
And then also there's a buyer's tag receipt, a buyer's copy?
We use that as a proof of registration.
Okay, and again, it says Otis McKane, Sandra McCain are the two owners. A VIN number, it has, let's see, it has a buyer's tag. So this would have been the initial one, is that right? With like maybe a paper tag
Yes, ma'am.
before they received the metal plates.
Correct.
All right. And looking at the buyers, the last page again, Estates Exhibit number 36, are you able to see by looking who's the issuing dealer of that vehicle to Otis McCain and Sandra McCain?
The lien holder would be the Chacon Autos.
Okay, so that would be here, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
So this packet that the jury just saw, State's Exhibit number 36, that would have been filled out when Mr. McCain came to the rent-a-tire store and purchased, or rent-to-own the rents, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and what then happened after, on September the 6th of 2016, after the references checked out and the paperwork was signed?
We do the install put the wheels and tires on the vehicle and then let the customer go.
Okay, so would that occur on the same day,
Yes, ma'am.
September 6th of 2016?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you said we installed the wheels, looking at State's Exhibit number 151, there's what appears to be a garage door or bay here, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and who drives when the defendant purchased the vehicle, is the customer allowed to drive in the bay, or who drives into the bay?
It's one of the employees that drive the vehicle in the bay.
Okay, so one of the rent-a-tire employees?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so customers are not allowed to drive into.
No, ma'am, they're not allowed to drive in.
And then, in this case, with Mr. McCain, you said in the rental agreement he paid cash, and it was, what, $1,350.96?
Yeah, he would pay that cash. He had 90 days to pay that price off.
Okay, and so how often did Mr. McCain come to the rent-a-tire store to make payments on the wheels and rents?
Every Friday.
And you said every Friday, so every Friday beginning
The week after. Yeah, usually it's a week after their first after the initial initial installment. It's a week after that the payment's going to be due.
Okay, and would you see Mr. McCain when he came weekly to make those payments?
Every Friday, myself would take the payments from Mr. McCain.
Okay, and did you have conversations with Mr. McCain?
For a good 5 minutes, roughly.
Each time? Right?
Each time he would come in.
Okay,
Yeah.
and what did y'all talk about?
Him playing basketball, him loving that sport, trying out for the Spurs, him wanting to try out for the Spurs D League. So it was a good conversation with him.
Okay, and was there something that Otis McCain would wear every time he came?
Always, most of the time, a black zip-up hoodie and a Spurs hat.
Okay, and was there anything unique about the Spurs hat?
It would always be just the Spurs logo, the Spurs retro logo.
Okay, and would he wear one Spurs hat or multiple?
Multiple Spurs hat.
Okay, so when you would have these conversations with him, you said it would be like once a week.
Once every week, every Friday, when he would come in, make his payment, we would just talk about that.
Okay. And when did he make, do you recall when he made his last payment?
When he made his, I don't recall the date when he made his last payment, but I know his last payment. He came to me, I shook his hand, and I told him if there's anything else that he needed in the near future, for him to come to me, and I'll take care of him.
Okay. Do you recall or remember that on seeing the news on November 20th of 2016 about a San Antonio police officer being shot and killed in front of police headquarters?
Yes, I do recall that.
And when did you, if that was on a Sunday, when did you last see Otis McKane make his final payment in relation to when you saw the news about the police officer that Sunday?
It probably would have been the Friday before.
Okay, so just 2 days before?
That he paid off the account.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And so when you, do you recall when you saw the news about the San Antonio police officer being killed?
I believe it was Sunday late, if I'm not mistaken, late in the evening, before bed.
The same day that the officer was killed?
Correct.
On that Sunday, November 20th,
Yes, ma'am.
2016. And when you saw the news, did you see anything that, anyone or anything that you recognized?
Well, I recognized a few things. I recognized the Spurs cap, the frame from Mr. Otis McKane, and then the vehicle.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked. State's Exhibit number 11 and State's Exhibit number 40. These have been marked and introduced into evidence. Do you recognize the individual that's shown in State's Exhibits 11 and 40?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and who is that individual?
Otis McKane.
Okay, and is that the same Otis Tyrone McKane that you've identified in court today?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, looking at State's Exhibit number 11, and State's Exhibit number 40, you said you recognize this individual.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay. When you saw the news, did you immediately recognize the individual?
I did. I actually told my wife, I was like, that's Otis McKane, right? That's one of my customers.
Okay. And you told the jury about this particular Spurs hat and Spurs hats that he would wear.
Right.
Do you recognize the hat that Otis McKane is wearing in State's Exhibit number 40 and 11?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And how is it that you recognize this particular Spurs hat?
That's one of the hats that he would wear when he would come and make payments.
Okay, so you've seen him wearing this exact hat?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. And you testified about a black, and you described it as a black zip-up hoodie?
Black zip-up hoodie,
Okay.
yes.
And do you see, looking at State's Exhibit number 40, do you see what appears to be a zipper on this, either a black hoodie or black jacket, maybe even underneath the jacket?
Yeah, I see a zipper, yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay. All right. And then you said, Mr. Rodriguez, that you recognize the vehicle.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And how many times do you think you saw this Mitsubishi Galant that belonged to Mr. McKane?
Every time he would come in.
So every week from September the 6th of 2016 until November the, say, 18th of 2016.
I believe so, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I'm going to show you what's been introduced into evidence as State's Exhibit number 39. Do you recognize this picture is one that you had seen on the news?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And upon seeing this picture, what did you recognize about it?
The rims.
And are those, can you tell the jury a little bit about those rims?
22-inch Veloci Rockets, rare rose. Actually, my first set of wheels that I put on the Galant, like this. So, and then they don't make them anymore.
Okay. And the 22-inch, you said Veloci, Rent-A-Tire carries those rims?
Yes,
Or did,
we
right?
did carry them. Yes, correct.
And are those rims such where you can get them anywhere in the city?
No, not necessarily anywhere in the city. Only from Rent-A-Tire.
Okay. So you recognize the rims. Is there anything else unique to this particular vehicle that you remember?
I know in the front, like the front grill had like a chrome piece on around the grill.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked and introduced into evidence. State's Exhibit number 131. Do you recognize that vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and what is the vehicle shown in State's Exhibit 31 and State's Exhibit number 33? Whose vehicle is that?
Otis.
133, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. State's Exhibits 131 and 133.
Otis McKane's.
Now, you said that there's some chrome on the front of the vehicle. Can you tell us about that?
The chrome grill. Most galants don't come with that grill.
So this area here is the grill.
Correct.
And looking at State's Exhibit number 131, the license plate number HJB2098. Do you see that, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
And does that license plate on the Mitsubishi Galant that we're looking at, State's Exhibit 131, does that match the license plate number that is on the Rent-A-Tire paperwork, HJB2098, that's signed by Mr. McKane?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, looking at these photographs, State's Exhibit number 131. You see, and here's a close-up, State's Exhibit number 121. You see kind of some paint markings on the front of the...
I'm going to object to the nature of the question.
Well, can you see paint markings on the front of the vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, in these photographs, State's Exhibits 131 and 121. And then State's Exhibit number 125. Do you see anything on the front of the Mitsubishi Galant?
Just the paint scuffings
On the, where do you see them, sir?
on the hood and the windshield.
Okay. And those paint scrapings or paint markings that you see in these photographs, State's Exhibits 125, 131, were those there when you saw the defendant just, I guess, a couple days before this, on November the 18th of 2016? Were these paint scrapings on that Mitsubishi Galant?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Had you ever seen, any of the times that he had come, had you ever seen these paint scrapings on this vehicle?
No, ma'am, I haven't.
Okay. And is there a form or something that's filled out if there are, in fact, damage or something to a vehicle when y'all are either servicing it or checking on it?
Yes, it's a work order that we fill out every time the vehicle's being serviced.
Okay. And to your knowledge, you never filled one out? Is
No,
that right?
correct. Only if the customer has damage to the vehicle, we fill it out.
And what's the reason for that? Why would y'all fill that out?
So that way we can protect our liability as well, so that a customer can't say that we damaged the vehicle.
And I want to show you, looking at State's Exhibit number 133. Looking at this picture, do you see anything, can you tell the jury anything about the wheels or the rims on State's Exhibit number 133 that you see?
Just, I know them as 22-inch Veloci rockets.
And State's Exhibit number 122 is the, State's Exhibit 133 shows what side of the vehicle, sir?
The driver's side.
And then State's Exhibit number 122 shows what side of the vehicle?
That's the passenger side.
Okay, and of that same?
Oh, the same.
I'm sorry?
The same vehicle.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
belonging to Otis McKane?
Yes, ma'am.
You had testified about markings or etchings that are placed inside of the rims, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. It's either placed on the inside of the wheel or the outside of the wheel.
Okay, I'm gonna show you what's been marked as, Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
State's Exhibit number 148. Do you recognize the etching that's inside of this wheel rim? Is that a wheel or a rim? What is it?
The rim or wheel, yes, ma'am. Yes, I do recognize the etching. That's the etching that we put on the wheel so we can identify our property.
All right, and when you look at the etching that is depicted in the picture in front of you, does that match the serial number that's shown as for one of the rims on State's Exhibit number 36?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And does this picture, State's Exhibit number 148, fairly and accurately show the etching of the inside of the wheel that you or your employees would have etched into the inside of the rim that the defendant rented to purchase from Rent-A-Tire?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Your Honor, this time the state moves to introduce State's Exhibit number 148.
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez, good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
My name is Wade Patterson, I represent Mr. McCain.
Yes, sir.
Only, I don't know if it's my eyes or
Yes, sir.
whatever, but can you tell me what the number that you see there is? Not,
Yeah. 122.
okay, let me see, just maybe your eyes are better than mine. Can you
122550078.
Okay, God, your eyes are better than mine. Okay.
Your Honor, may I approach one more time?
I didn't hear whether there were objections.
Oh, no objections, Your Honor.
All right, it's admitted.
All right, and one more photo, State's Exhibit number 150. Again, do you see the serial number etched inside the wheel that's shown in State's Exhibit number 150?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and the etching from that would have been done by you or one of your Rent-A-Tire employees?
Correct.
And does that serial number match the serial number in Mr. McCain's Rent-A-Tire agreement, State's Exhibit number 36, for a different tire?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and what is the serial number in State's Exhibit number 150?
121255079.
Okay. Your Honor, this time the state moves to introduce State's Exhibit number 150.
Previously, you had to do under no objection.
Artist admitted.
So just looking now at State's Exhibit number 148. Can you tell the jury what they're looking at in State's Exhibit number 148?
You are looking at it's going to be the etching that we put on each wheel to identify our property.
So it says rent a tire,
Rent a tire number 12, and then the serial number.
and the serial number here is what, sir?
122555078.
And does that correspond to the serial number in the defendant's rent-a-tire contract, State's Exhibit number 36, rent-a-tire number 12, and then does it correspond to any of these serial numbers for the Balachi rocket?
Yes, ma'am. It corresponds to the rims.
Okay, and which one does it correspond to?
The first one.
Okay, the 122550078,
Yes, ma'am.
and it's here, is that correct, sir?
Yes,
Where
ma'am.
it's etched in to the right of the right side of the photograph in State's Exhibit number 148.
Correct.
And then looking at State's Exhibit number 150, can you tell the jury what they're looking at here?
It's the same thing as the etching of the wheel, of the second wheel that we put on the vehicle.
Okay, and there's kind of a glare, I guess, in the picture, but are you able to see the number that's etched in here?
Yes, ma'am. 122055579.
Okay, so at the end, without the glare, there's a 79. Is that
Correct.
right?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
And then it has the number 12 again.
For our location.
Okay, and then it begins their rent-a-tire.
Correct.
Right?
Yes, ma'am.
And does that second number, the one that you just read on State's Exhibit number 150, does that correspond to a serial number in the defendant's rental purchase agreement?
The second rim that we installed on the vehicle.
Okay, right here. And what is that number?
122550079.
Okay, so that corresponds to the etching in State's Exhibit number 150.
Correct.
So, Mr. Rodriguez, after seeing the news that Sunday, you said you told your wife, you told your wife something, and then what did you then do, sir?
Went into the store the next morning, and that's when Mr. Hinojosa approached me and asked me about if I saw the news, and I told him I did.
And when you say Mr. Hinojosa, what is his name?
Joseph Hinojosa.
Okay, and who is Joseph Hinojosa?
At the time, he was my assistant manager.
At Renatine?
Correct.
The same location at 813 Bandera?
Correct.
Okay. And so, what did you tell Mr. Hinojosa?
That, in fact, that was Otis McKane.
And what was there a decision made based on having seen the news?
Yes, I believe Mr. Hinojosa tried to contact Crime Stoppers, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. And after that phone call was made to, you said Crime Stoppers, did the police come out to the Renatire location?
They did, yes, ma'am.
And then did they take statements from you, Mr. Hinojosa, and another employee?
Correct, they did.
And what is that other employee's name?
I believe Mike Garcia.
Okay. And what position did Mike Garcia have?
He was a sales rep
At Renatire?
at the Renatire location, correct.
All right, Your Honor, at this time I'll pass the witness. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. They may have some questions.
Okay.
Just briefly, Mr. Lee.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So the purchase was in September the 6th of 2016, correct?
September?
The agreement was entered on September the 6th of 2016?
I believe so, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. And 1350 was the total amount?
1315 some change, yes, sir, for the 90 days.
And you testified, let's see, September 3, 4. So maybe Mr. McKane came 9 Fridays, 8 Fridays, something like that?
I believe so. He would come in every Friday to make his
Okay.
payment in cash at that with me.
And he would deal
With me.
directly with you?
Yeah.
Okay. And maybe it's in there in the the exhibit, but how much would he pay every Friday, if you recall?
His payment, whatever his payment was at the time. I don't know exactly the payment.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Could someone come and pay more? They could.
Most definitely, yeah. To pay it off of course, to pay it off in a faster way.
Okay. And the times that Mr. McCain came in, was he a friendly individual?
He was, yes, definitely. And we engaged in talking all the time. For the 5 minutes about the Spurs, or about basketball.
Sure. And was he courteous to you?
Very, yeah.
Respectful?
Respectful, yes, sir.
Did he deal with other employees there?
He dealt with Mike and then I believe Joseph as well.
Okay. And with them, was he also courteous?
Correct.
Friendly?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you said that he spoke with you about wanting to play basketball and trying out with the Spurs D League, I think you said?
D League?
Yeah. Do you recall anything else you talked about?
No, just that.
Just chit-chat, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then on his payments, he was being financially responsible, I would imagine.
Correct.
Okay. And did the agreement call for the payments to be made every Friday, or that just happens when he came in?
Agreements, all payments are due on Saturdays, so he came in on Fridays to make his payment.
Oh, so it's not like if a guy gets a payday on Tuesday, you make an agreement that he comes in on Tuesday?
Correct.
Okay, for everybody, the payments are Saturday?
Correct.
And did he ever miss a Friday?
Never.
Okay. Only because the prosecutor asked you about the paint scratches on this vehicle, those photos.
Yes, sir.
The time that you would look at a car carefully and note it in the contract is when you're going to put it, drive it into the bay for it to be worked on. What you don't want is for someone to say, "Oh, you scratched the door," or whatever.
Correct.
Okay. And that would be the time that you pay attention to the vehicle that you're working on and installing the tires or the wheels or whatever, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, on other occasions, other Fridays, when the vehicle would come in, were you interested in the condition of the Mitsubishi Galant?
No. The only way we'd go out there is if the customer or Mr. McCain would complain about wheels or like a tire or something like that. So we'd go out to the vehicle and inspect it.
Okay. Did he, in fact, ever complain?
I think maybe a couple times. It's just we had to replace the tire frame, but that's it.
To do what?
Replace the tire?
Oh, replace a tire. So then what? Would that be a purchase of another tire?
No, it would be not purchased because we covered the tire. So-
Okay. For damage or something like that?
Correct.
Okay. Now, on the Friday before the 20th, which would have been the 18th, did you happen to be interested in going to look at the Galant?
No, not that day I didn't.
Okay. No further questions. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez.
Nothing further from the state.
All right, you're here.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right, State, call your next witness.
State call CSI Mark Machado.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this trial will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
All right, you guys. Introduce yourself to the jury and spell your name for the court reporter, please.
My name is Mark Machado. I'm a crime scene investigator. The name's M-A-R-C, last name M-A-C-H-A-D-O.
Good morning.
Morning.
How long have you worked with SAPD crime scene unit?
This September will be my 25th year in the crime scene unit.
And can you tell the jury what kind of training you received to be a member of the crime scene unit?
It's like a 3-month academy where you learn how to collect, process, photograph, videotape evidence, package evidence.
And is that the type of work you've been doing all 25 years?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Were you asked by the lead investigator, Mark Duke, on the capital murder of Benjamin Marconi to remove some wheels and rims from a vehicle and photograph the serial numbers on the wheels, and also to gather any loose paperwork that was in the vehicle?
Yes, ma'am, I was. And if I could see my report, that would help me out. But I do remember getting contacted by Detective Duke.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Here's a copy of your report, sir.
Yes, ma'am, I remember.
So you were asked to remove the rims and wheels and collect any loose paperwork.
Correct.
And is that what you did that day?
Yes, ma'am.
May I approach the witness? I'm going to show you a series of photographs, 139 to 147 inclusive, and then 149. Are these photographs you personally took?
Yes, ma'am, they are. And these were taken at our SAPD fleet garage, where they work on our cars, because we don't have access to remove the tires and wheels at our crime scene unit.
Okay.
So I'd met them over there.
And are these an accurate representation of a black Mitsubishi Galant with license plate HJV 2098?
Yes, ma'am.
As you saw it then?
Yes, ma'am.
At this time, state would move to introduce 139 through 147 inclusive, and then 149.
Can we approach one?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Machado. I believe we'll be calling you back at a later date. The state doesn't have any further questions at this time.
No questions.
Okay, thank you, Judge.
All right, State, call your next witness.
State calls Mike Garcia. Hey, Mike Garcia.
All right, John, I'm going to swear you in. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this trial will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, then lower your hand.
Thank you.
Make sure everybody can hear you. If you could introduce yourself to the jury and spell your name for the court report.
Yes, my name is Michael Garcia. Michael spelled M-I-C-H-A-E-L. Garcia is G-A-R-C-I-A.
All right, State.
Texas.
Thank you, Ron. Can you introduce yourself to the jury, please, sir?
Yes, my name is Michael Garcia.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
I worked at Rent-A-Tire during the time when this incident occurred.
Okay, well, let's start with this, Mr. Garcia. Are you employed right now?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay, what do you do for a living?
I work for Wells Fargo.
Okay. Now, let's go back to November of 2016.
Sure.
Where were you working then?
I was working at Rent-A-Tire on Bandera Road.
Okay. And what was your job there at Rent-A-Tire on Bandera Road?
I was a wheel and tire salesman.
Okay. And we've heard from Josephina Hosa and Justin Rodriguez. Do you recognize those names?
Yes, sir, I do.
And who are those individuals?
Joseph was my assistant manager at the time, and Justin was the store manager at that time.
Okay. And do you remember this date, November 20th, 2016? Does that stick in your mind for any reason?
Not necessarily. I mean, it might have. Yeah, not necessarily.
Let me ask you this. Monday, November 21st, 2016.
Oh, okay.
Do you remember a lot of police officers showing?
Yes, sir. Yeah, when I arrived to work that day, there was a packed house.
Okay. And do you know why they were there?
Yes, sir.
Why were they there?
Because SAPD detective, unfortunately, had his life taken.
Okay. When did you first find out about the San Antonio Police Department detective Benjamin Marconi being shot?
It would have been the Sunday before the store. The police came to the store. I saw the news.
So just one day before the police showed up at the Rent-A-Tire on Bandera, you became aware of the shooting?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how did you become aware of the shooting?
I saw the news, but the video evidence that they played on the news.
Okay. When you say the video evidence they played on the news, what kind of video evidence did you see on the news on the evening of November 20th, 2016?
I believe it was a picture of the individual walking into the court, and then as well as the vehicle driving away from what they say was the scene of the crime.
And did you recognize that individual?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you recognize the car?
Yes, sir, I did.
And how was it that, let's start with the car, how was it that you recognized the car?
I recognized the vehicle because he had came in, I believe it was the Friday before the incident happened, to pay the merchandise off. So I took a payment, so I saw the vehicle. I also saw him as well.
Okay. So you see him Sunday night on the news, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you're telling the jury that you saw him just 2 days before that on Friday?
Yes, sir, exactly.
Okay. And why did you see him on Friday?
He came in to make his last payment on the wheels and tires that he has.
All right. And do you remember that Friday when he came in to make the last payment?
Yes, sir, I do.
And what happened? What happened? What were your dealings? Did you have some dealings with him on that Friday?
Yes, sir, I did. I'm actually the one who took the payment for his last payment. So he came in. We spoke just cordially, professionally, just, hello, how are you? I took the payment. He made his payoff. He actually needed to get a flat repair done as well, so I did a work order for the work that needed to be done on the vehicle, and he left for the day.
Okay, so if he needed a flat repaired on that Friday, 2 days before the killing of Detective Marconi, where would that repair take place?
It would have taken place at the shop where we worked on Bendera Road.
Okay, in one of the bays at the Rent-A-Tire?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and if that needs to be done, who drives the car into the bay to work on the vehicle?
Normally the tire tech will. He'll come and get the keys while we're finishing up some paperwork that needs to be done. He'll bring in the vehicle.
Okay. For liability purposes, do you allow the customer to drive their own vehicle into the bay?
No, sir. They're allowed to watch outside the bay if they really want to look, but for the most part, we don't allow them in the bay.
All right. Now, is there a policy that Rent-A-Tire has when you're working on a car like that, if you see damage to the vehicle, that you're supposed to document that?
For sure. Yes, sir. Yeah, we normally note it on the work order. Just that way, if there is damage, we can let the customer be aware. If we see damage, we bring in the customer to let them know that, you know, if the damage was there before, that way they're aware of it. And, you know, that's just for liability purposes, so they don't think we damaged the vehicle.
So on I guess it would have been November 18th, Friday before Detective Marconi was killed, was any damage noted to the Mitsubishi Galant owned by Otis McKane?
No, sir. None that would require me to notate it that stood out that much.
Okay. If there had been paint markings kind of all over that vehicle, on the hood, on the window, on the roof, on the back, would you have notated
I would
that?
object to leaving, Your Honor.
Sustained.
If there had been damage on that vehicle in various locations, would you have been required to notate that?
Yes, sir, for sure.
And there was no notation, is that right?
No, sir, not that I recall.
So, where were you the night of November 20th when you saw the news?
I was at home with my family.
And were you watching the news by yourself, or were other people watching it with you?
I was watching it with my mother and my brother.
Okay. And when the story came on, did you say anything about what you saw?
Yes, I told my mother that, you know, it's...
I'm going to object to hearsay, Your Honor, and leaving.
Objection, Your Honor. I'm sorry. This is what he said. What he told his mother.
It's still hearsay, Your Honor.
Oh, overrule.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I told her that, you know, that looks like an individual that I just recently talked to a couple of days prior, and also the vehicle as well. You know, since I got a very good look at the vehicle, you know, it's the same person driving the same vehicle, so I told her I believe I recognize that individual.
And did you give a statement when the police came in the next day on Monday?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did you have a discussion with Joseph and Justin the next day on Monday about Otis McKane?
No, when I arrived to work that day, everyone was already there before me, and when I arrived, all the officers and everybody was already there. So when I arrived, all I did was give my statement of what happened at work prior on Friday.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Garcia, let me show you what's been marked and introduced into evidence as State's Exhibit number 39. Do you recognize that?
Yes, sir, I do.
And what is that?
It looks to be a 05 to 2011 Mitsubishi Galant.
Okay, and have you seen that before?
Yes, sir.
Where have you seen it?
I saw it on the news, this picture, but I also saw the vehicle in person on Friday.
Okay, and anything unusual about the vehicle that helps you recall it?
Just the design of the wheels themselves is kind of what, for me, definitely made it seem like that's something I've definitely seen before.
And were those rims purchased through your company at the time?
Yes, sir, correct.
Okay. And when you said you told the police or told your mother, I recognize that guy, was it based on seeing a photo like that of this car?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And now let me hand you what's been marked and introduced into evidence of State's Exhibit number 40. Do you recognize that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what do you recognize that to be?
It looks to be Otis McKane.
Okay. And did you tell the police that, in your opinion, that was Otis McKane?
Yes, I did.
Okay. On how many occasions do you think you've seen Otis McKane when he would come in every Friday to make a payment?
That was actually the first time that I saw him. Yes,
That
sir.
was the first time,
Yes.
okay. Do you see Otis McKane in the courtroom?
Yes, sir.
Can you point him out and describe what he's wearing, please?
Sure. It's this individual here. It looks to be a light blue shirt, dark blue pants, black shoes, gray tie.
Mr. Garcia, if this person is number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4, what number would Otis McKane be?
Number 4.
And is the person you just identified as Otis McKane, is that the same person that you saw 2 days before come into the rent-a-tire, pay off his tires, and then have his car worked on in one of the bays?
Yes, sir. Correct.
Thank you, sir. I pass the witness. Mr. Garcia.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, my name's Floyd Dennis, and I represent Mr. McCain here. So, you didn't deal with Mr. McCain prior to this Friday on the 18th?
No, just the Friday he came in to make his last payment.
Okay, and you took that payment, not Justin?
Yes, sir. I took that payment.
Okay.
If I can just give some detail on that. I was fairly new at the time, so to do a payoff, I didn't have the authorization to do it. So I had to get the manager involved to complete the payoff for me. So that's why I did take the payment, but so did Justin in a way.
And when you say payoff, it means that, you all have an agreement and the guy's making payments, and so it's like finally paying your car, finally paying your tires, whatever. Right?
Yes, sir. Correct.
And so in that respect, Mr. McCain was financially responsible with regards to this agreement?
As far as paying off his merchandise, yes, sir. He paid it off.
And when you saw him that Friday, was he friendly to you?
We had a cordial conversation. I kept it mainly professional. Just, hello, sir. How are you? How's your day going? Things like that. Nothing too personal.
Okay. Now, you said you were a sales...
A salesman.
Okay. And so you're not the tire tech, you called it a tire tech or something?
Yeah, no, sir. I'm not.
Okay. So you didn't personally work on the car?
No, all I did was to get, since I am the salesman, to get the work order done, to have the customer get signed, I have to go to the vehicle to get the mileage, make sure the VIN number is correct, and then have the customer sign the work order.
Thank you, sir. No
Yes,
further
sir.
questions, sir. No questions.
All right, sir, you're excused.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, State, call your next witness.
Your Honor, this time the state moves to introduce State's Exhibit Number 152, which has previously been tendered to the defense. We filed business records, affidavits. It's a certified copy from Texas Department of Motor Vehicles.
We already have a 152.
We already have one. Okay, what's our next one?
153.
Okay, I'm going to mark it 153, Your Honor.
All right.
State call Danny Martinez.
Are there any objections to 153?
We'll just do...
I'd like to make sure the same basis for here.
it's marked State's Exhibit number 153, and it's the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles certified copy.
No objection.
All right, it's admitted. All right, sir, I'm going to swear you in. You could raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this trial will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I'm sure everybody can hear you. If you could introduce yourself to the jury and spell your name for the court reporter, please.
Yes, Judge. My name is Danny Martinez, D-A-N-N-Y, Martinez, M-A-R-T-I-N-E-Z.
State.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sergeant Martinez, can you tell the jury a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how you were raised, or who raised you?
Yes, sir. So I was raised here in San Antonio, in the west side, in the Alazan Apache courts by my mother, who was a single parent.
And where'd you grow up and go to high school?
I grew up not too far from here. If you guys know, it's just a little couple miles from here, right around Guadalupe and Brazos area. And I went to high school at Lanier High School.
Well, I heard a rumor that you were the quarterback for Lanier back in the day. Is that right?
Yes, sir. A long time ago.
Okay. Did you ever lead them to victory in the Chili Bowl?
I did.
Congratulations. So, how many years have you been a police officer, sir?
It's been about 24 years. I did a couple years with the Bexar County Sheriff's Department, and I did a little bit. Spent a little bit, about 20 or so years with the city.
Okay. Can you tell the jury a little bit about where you've been over your long career with SAPD, the different places that you've worked, different functions you've had?
Yes, sir. So I started at Central, what they call Dog Watch Patrol, back in 2000. From there, I went to the TRU unit, which is the Tactical Response Unit. From there, I went to SWAT. After SWAT, when I promoted to detective, I went to the gang unit, which switched over to street crimes. Then they went over to the TAG unit, which is the Texas Anti-Gang Unit. After that, I went to the Repeat Offenders Program, which is ROPE. After ROPE, I went to the Southwest Texas Fusion Center. After that, I went to mental health. And after mental health, I've been with Central Patrol B.
You mentioned the Fusion Center. Can you tell that's kind of not explanatory on its face. Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what the job is? What did you do at the Fusion Center?
I was more of an intel detective. It's an all threats, all hazards type of unit. We get a lot of agencies that call us and they want certain information, what we call workups, and we do some research and we give them, whatever packets that they need.
Now, right now, I see that you're a sergeant. What are your current duties, sir?
So my current duty is a supervisor at the Central Patrol B shift, and I supervise the officers that go out on patrol.
And what district roughly does Central Patrol encompass?
Central has the 21 section, which is the kind of like the downtown area. It goes over to what used to be the 23 side, and it's right around Lanier High School, around the Alazan Apache courts. Then it goes over further west to closer to General McMullen. It goes towards I-10, Vance Jackson, over to 281 Bassey area.
Would it include the area of the Lincoln Courts?
It does.
Okay. Are you familiar with that area of the Lincoln Courts?
Yes, sir, I am.
And how are you familiar basically with that area of town?
So when I started my patrol duties, I was assigned to what was the 23 section, and the 23 section covers the Lincoln Courts, which is right around Poplar, Hamilton. Kind of borders, that's the border, it's Poplar, Hamilton. It goes a little bit further, but the Lincoln Courts are pretty much around Poplar, North Hamilton, Culebra, and South Zamora.
The intersection of Poplar and Calaveras, are you familiar with that intersection?
Poplar and Calaveras?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. About how far, just ballparking it, would that be from the address of 1236 Lombrano?
Not even a mile
Okay. And,
to the east.
Okay. And in order to get from Poplar and Calaveras over to 1236 Lombrano, is there kind of a major thoroughfare that you've got to cross in order to get to the other side?
Well, you're going to cross North-South Zamora.
Okay. And is that is South Zamora in that area? Is that a two-way street in each direction?
It is.
Sergeant, I want to take you back to November 20th of 2016. Do you remember that date?
Yes, sir.
And why is it that you remember that date?
That's when Detective Marconi was killed.
Did you know Detective Marconi?
I did.
How did you know Detective Marconi?
Well, he worked Central, and so, like I said earlier, I worked Central Dog Watch, which is the C shift. So we would, from time to time, we would cross path, when he was getting, coming in and I was actually getting out. But he was even at the gang unit, so I didn't work with him during that time, but being that, we were pretty active during what they call directed patrol, where you go out there and you're going to some of these high crime areas, and the gang unit was out there too, so we kind of would, see each other when I was in SWAT. The same thing, so, we talked, for a good while. I even worked with Ben 2 weeks prior to that day. I was working with them at the downtown, which was I think they called it the Downtown Initiative. And Bike Patrol used to hire overtime just to kind of keep all the vagrants and everybody out from the downtown area, and so they wouldn't bother some of the tourists.
So the Downtown Initiative, that we've heard testimony that that's what Ben Marconi was doing on that Sunday.
Yes, sir.
Working that. You're telling the members of the jury that you did the same thing also?
I did.
And that was the last time?
Yeah, Ben and I had breakfast, small little restaurant on Houston, Santa Rosa area. Had a good conversation. I mean, we always had a real good, meeting, just, talking, and, he was telling me about, his grandkids.
Your Honor, non-responsive.
Get the next question.
Sergeant, let me take you, so November 20th, 2016, were you working that day, or did you have any kind of assignment in regard to trying to find out who the killer of Detective Marconi was?
I was working that day.
And can you tell, and what unit would you have been with back in November of 2016?
I was with ROPE, the Repeat Offenders program.
Okay, and what would your rank have been at the time?
Detective.
All right, and can you describe what you were called on to do in order to help out with the investigation?
Yeah, so there was a lot of moving parts, after Marconi got killed, and we were called in to pretty much go and try to get some, stationary surveillance at certain locations where people were calling in. There were some leads. So we kind of shifted to certain areas of the city just to see if we would, get anything that would match or at least get closer to that vehicle that was involved in that murder.
And this was on November the 20th, that Sunday?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so were those pretty much your duties with regard to the investigation at that point on November the 20th?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And let's move, I guess, now to the 21st. Did you play any role on the 21st?
I did. So there was a lot of people involved. So our ROPE Daylight had worked, some extra hours. So we worked, from 3 to 11 or so, something like that, 3 to 1. but they, our supervisor at the time called us in to go relieve daylight because they were there for a good number of hours. So we were called to relieve them, and so I got my my duty as far as to relieve one of the detectives that was out conducting surveillance at the Lincoln courts.
And what time, about what time, or do you know about what time you would have gone out there on surveillance?
I want to say it was closer to noon. And so I took the position around North Hamilton and Lombrano, where one of the other daylight A shift detectives was at, and I took his position.
And I think you've already testified that you're familiar with that location.
Yes, sir.
And who would have been your supervisor directing rope detectives on what their assignments would have been?
Sergeant Berrigan.
Last name again?
Berrigan.
Very good.
Mm-hmm. With a B. Bravo.
And who would have been the lieutenant for rope at the time who would have been directing Sergeant Berrigan?
The lieutenant, I want to say at the time, was Lieutenant Ward.
Jeff Ward?
Jeff Ward.
And when you went out there to do surveillance, can you explain to the members of the jury a little bit about that? How does one conduct surveillance on a location?
So the rope detectives, there's 10 per shift. We wear civilian clothes to kind of blend in with everybody else. That's in case we have to leave our vehicles and go into the neighborhood. So some of us, have beards, long hair. We drive unmarked vehicles, just like anybody else that's driving out there in the neighborhood. And we, like I said, I took the position at North Hamilton and Lombrano. So I was in an unmarked vehicle. I parked there. I put my visor up, and I waited there because there was 2 locations that were mentioned by the daylight rope detectives that they were observing during the time that they were on shift. So when I got my assignment, got briefed on the 2 locations, that's when I took up the stationary position for myself.
Do you remember the address of the 2 locations? And if you need to refresh your memory with your report, that's fine. But do you remember the addresses they gave you that were locations of interest to the San Antonio Police Department?
Yes, sir. So you have 2 apartments.
Well, let me do it. Let's do it this way. May I approach your honor?
Yes.
Sergeant Martinez, I'm handing you what's been marked for identification purposes. As States Exhibit 154, and just kind of to orient you, you can take a look at that sign there. Can you tell the members, do you recognize that?
Yeah, it's our Zamora and Lombrano.
Okay. And is that a fair and accurate representation of the way that intersection looks?
Yes.
And I think you previously told the members of the jury that's a busy thoroughfare with 2-way traffic going one way and 2-way traffic going the other. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And States Exhibit 155, can you take a look at that and tell me if you recognize what State 155 is?
Yeah, so that's the intersection of North Hamilton. I can't see the other street, but that's Lombrano.
Okay. Okay.
I know the two buildings that are right there on the southeast corner of that intersection.
And this little park area to the right, do you recognize that also?
Yeah, that's I don't know if it's Lombrano Park, but it's a park where a lot of soccer players that actually go out there and play.
Okay. Does that fairly and accurately depict the intersection of Lombrano and Hamilton?
It does.
Okay. Now, let me show you what's been marked as States Exhibit number 156. Can you recognize that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you tell the members of the jury what that is?
Yeah, so these 2 buildings that have some apartments on the bottom and on the top, these were the 2 locations that we were given information, and the information that I received from the daylight rope detectives that were being observed. So you have the 2 apartments, right? And they're split by a breezeway. So to the left you have 1230, the bottom apartment, and to the right, you have 1236, which is another bottom apartment.
Okay, so is this the two locations you've testified you were ordered to keep watch on?
Yes, sir.
All right. And State's Exhibit number 157, do you recognize what State's Exhibit 157 is?
Yes, sir. That's the vehicle that arrived during the time that I was conducting surveillance. That's the four-door Buick Century.
Okay. And do you recognize what State's Exhibit 158 is?
Yes, sir. That's the license plate that I provided during the time that I observed that vehicle come and park on the north side of the street.
Okay, we'll put these up so the jury can see that. The State's Exhibit 157, the white Buick, who was driving that?
There was a black female that was driving it.
Your Honor, at this time we'll offer into evidence State's Exhibit 154, 155, 156, 157, and 158. Intended them, counsel.
Right, they're admitted.
So Sergeant Martinez, let's start with what's now in evidence of State's Exhibit 154. Can you tell the members of the jury what this depicts?
Yes, that's the intersection of North Zarzamora and Lobrano.
And which side of it, if we're looking at this head on and we're talking about going to my right hand side, would that area be going towards the Lincoln Court?
Yes.
And if we're looking at this picture head on, State's Exhibit 154, and we're going to my left, would that be going in the direction of the intersection of Poplar and Calaveras?
Yes.
So if an individual is at the corner of Poplar and Calaveras and wants to get to the Lincoln Courts, they necessarily have to cross this road.
Yes, sir.
And now, Sergeant, let me show you State's Exhibit 155. Can you tell the members of the jury what that is?
Yes, sir. That's the corner of North Hamilton and Lobrano.
And can you see on there, you said that you were you were surveilling two apartments in the Lincoln Courts. Would it be on here could you show the members of the jury where your vehicle would have been?
Yeah, so it wouldn't be here because I was to the left.
Okay.
So if you look at the picture the way it is, to the right is the south side. So I was on the northwest side, right close to the intersection, where I'm kind of parked like this, and I'm facing to my left.
Okay, so can you circle with, I think you can mark on that screen. Can you mark on the screen the building you would have been keeping an eye on?
These right. Is it marking it?
Yeah.
These
Okay.
buildings.
Okay. And as you're sitting in your undercover vehicle, that building would have been on your left?
On my left.
Okay. And that's what you were keeping an eye on?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, State's Exhibit 156. What is State's Exhibit 156?
So these are the two buildings that I was describing. They sit on the south side of the 1200 block of Lobrano. And the two apartments that we were watching was your 1230, which is this bottom one. And then, like I said, I explained earlier, there was that breezeway. And then you have the other bottom apartment that is 1236.
Okay. So in State's 156, which is now in evidence, we see basically four doors in two different buildings. On the building on the left, we see an upstairs door and a downstairs door. The downstairs door, 1230 Lombrano, was that one of the addresses you were told to keep an eye on?
Yes, sir, 1230.
Okay. Now, just right across that breezeway, the downstairs door on the next building, 1236 Lombrano, which it's been in evidence that that's the address of the defendant, Otis McKane. Were you instructed to keep an eye on that as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You were instructed to keep an eye on both of those units?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you?
I did.
And obviously we know why you'd be instructed to keep an eye out for Otis McKane. Why were you told to be on the lookout for the occupant of 1230 Lombrano?
So the information that I received when I relieved the daylight detective at the time was that these were possible apartments that were associated with Mr. Otis, and and a girlfriend.
Now, at some point, you're watching these two places, and are you in communication, radio communication, with other people acting in the investigation?
Yes, sir, I am.
And you were told to keep an eye out. At some point, were you given information that maybe something was about to happen?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell the members of the jury what information that you got and how you acted on that information?
I'm going to reject the hearsay, Your Honor.
We're not offering for the truth of the matter, sir, Judge. It's about his investigation.
Overruled.
Go ahead, Sergeant.
So, during the time that I had my position, we have other detectives that are surrounding, the area, as far as the proximity, whether it's, to the south, I had the north, and we had people on the east and then to the west. And, the information was that there was a vehicle that was coming down or passing Zarzamora towards the 1200 block of Lombrano.
And were you given a description of that vehicle?
Yes.
Okay. And what was the description of the vehicle you were given?
Yeah, it was just a white four-door vehicle.
And did that white four-door vehicle that you were given information on, did you see it?
I did see it.
Okay. Where did you see it?
So, the position that I had, again, at the intersection of North Hamilton and Lombrano, you can clearly see, it's a pretty wide street, so you can clearly see further down to Elmendorf. As you pass Zarzamora and you're going westbound, the other cross street that you will come to is North Elmendorf. So I saw it right as it was crossing North Elmendorf.
Let me do this, Sergeant. Maybe this will help. Let me show you State's Exhibit 135, which is in evidence. Google Earth. Can you? I don't know if you can see or orient yourself. I can bring it up to you for a closer look. Can you see any of this? Is it too small for you to see?
Yeah, it's a little small, it's a little.
Okay, let me do this. Let me approach so you can kind of orient. May I approach, Judge?
Yes.
Let me show you State's Exhibit 135 so you can see the streets a little better.
Okay. So here you have Elmendorf.
Okay, let me put this back up and you can show the jury. And maybe if you can mark, use that red marker or your finger on the screen to show the jury what you're talking about.
This is North Elmendorf right here. So when you're crossing Zarzamora here, and as you're approaching this way, and you're going westbound, this is what you're going to cross is Elmendorf. And like I said, I was up here, and I could see the vehicle traveling my way.
May I approach, Judge?
Yes.
Sergeant, let me show you State's Exhibit 159. Can you tell me if you recognize that vehicle?
Yes, sir. That's the four-door Buick Century.
Okay. That you were told to be on the lookout for and that you said did show up at that location?
Right.
Okay. And State's Exhibit 160?
Yes, that's the same vehicle.
Okay, just a different view?
Different view.
And State's Exhibit 161?
Yeah, same vehicle, a different view.
Your Honor, at this time we'll offer into evidence State's Exhibit 159, 160, and 161.
No objection, Your Honor.
Right there, admitted.
So, Sergeant, State's Exhibit 159, which is now in evidence. That's the white Buick that you were told to be on the lookout for and that you saw at that
Yes, sir.
location?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And State's Exhibit 160, is that the same vehicle?
Same vehicle,
Just the driver's side?
driver's side.
Okay. And State's Exhibit 161, Sergeant?
Same vehicle, passenger side.
So when you you said you were in an unmarked vehicle, you're wearing civilian clothes. Were you working by yourself or did you have a partner working with you?
No, I was by myself.
And how were you staying in communication with other people?
Just our police radio.
So tell us what happened, or you're sitting there, and were you the only person, to your knowledge, that had eyes on those two doors, those two locations at that time?
Yes, sir. I had the best angle.
And when you get the news that the car is on its way, and then you see the car, what do you do?
Yeah, so when the car started approaching and it went past westbound on Elmendorf, I always carry a set of binoculars. So during the time that I was sitting there, I got my binoculars and I started looking towards the vehicle. And so I was able to get the license plate and provide that license plate to, the people that are in the background, right, where they actually can get or run the registration to this vehicle.
So you're sitting there, you got your binoculars, and you see a license plate. You give that information to somebody else. Do you know what they're doing with that information as you're giving it to them?
Yes, sir.
And what would they be doing?
Yeah, so they're going to enter that so they can get a return and to see what the registration comes back to.
And when you say a return, does that mean it identifies who the person connected with that vehicle?
Yeah, it'll have the make, model, the color, the VIN number. It'll have, the person that's registered to.
And since you were watching 1230 Lombrano, did y'all have information on who the occupant of 1230 Lombrano was?
Not at the time.
Okay. So you see the vehicle pull up, you get its license plate. What's going on now? Can you kind of, if you can kind of put yourself back there, okay? You're sitting in your car. For us, for the benefit of the jury, if you can take yourself back to that day as best you can, you're sitting in your car, you see the license plate, what are you doing next?
Yeah, so besides providing that license plate on the radio, I'm also observing to see who's inside that vehicle. When it approached, it parked a little shy, a little offset of that 1230 address. So I didn't park in front, parked just a little shy. And as I'm looking, I could see the female driver. She exits the vehicle, but at the same time, I noticed that the front right passenger seat, you can't see it in view. It's either missing or it's reclined all the way back. And I provide that information on the radio as well.
So I guess if you provided that information, it must have been significant to you?
When you think about the house, it's suspicious, right? So usually you don't see vehicles without a passenger seat. So with my training experience, a lot of the work that we've done when we've either had to take down a vehicle in the past, when I worked in the other units, a lot of times you'll have somebody reclined because they don't want to be seen, and so they're hiding.
And did you notice when this white vehicle pulls up, African American female exits? Did you see where she went to after she exited the car?
Yeah, so she went inside 1230 Lombrano.
Did anybody else get out of the vehicle besides her?
No.
This day, was this during the day that you were making your surveillance?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so was it a clear day to where you could clearly see what was going on?
Yes, sir. Very clear.
Any obstructions or anything in your way to where you were going to have a problem keeping your eye on this car, this person?
Not from the angle I had.
So how long, just ballparking it, was did the female ever come out of the apartment?
She did. It just, I would say, not even 5 minutes. It was real quick. She went inside the apartment. Short time, a couple minutes afterwards, she came out with a couple bags. Went inside the vehicle and she drove towards where I was at.
So, do you remember when she went into the apartment, did she have anything in her hands, if you remember?
None.
Okay. You say when she leaves, she's got a couple of bags. Do you remember, or can you describe what kind of bags we're talking about?
I want to say plastic bags, but it's been a little while.
So, she gets back in the vehicle. You said she starts coming towards you.
Right. She started driving. Again, she parked on the north side. She's facing west. When she gets inside the vehicle, she starts to drive towards the intersection of North Hamilton and Lebrano. I'm just across, that intersection. So I kind of recline my seat back. And so she makes a right turn. She stops at the stop sign, makes a right turn to go northbound towards Culebra. So when she did that, I tried to kind of get up from my seat to kind of see if I could see over, which was a little hard, from the angle where I was at. So, but the seat for sure was, reclined all the way back. It's just hard to see.
Could you determine if there was an individual in that seat?
From that angle, it was a little hard.
So, how many blocks approximately from that intersection of Hamilton and Lombrano to Culebra Road?
Well, you have, to the north, you have Henry, you have Carter. I might miss a street here. There, Henry, Carter. We say McLeod, but it's McLeod, McLeod or McLeod. And then you have Culebra. So about four streets or so.
Were you still stationary at this point?
I was still stationary.
Did you follow the vehicle?
No. The rule is when you have the eye, you don't leave. So we're not for sure who's in that vehicle, even though the suspicion is there. I can't leave that spot that I have.
Well, does that just mean, geez, we've kind of lost this person because I'm not going to follow him?
No.
Or
No.
are you giving that information, transmitting that information?
Right. So every move that's happening, I'm relaying on the radio. Whether it's driving towards me, it's making a right to go northbound on Culebra. All that information was relayed on the radio. The information was also relayed to the point to where I could still see, because North Hamilton, as you're traveling north towards Culebra, it's still pretty wide. So I was giving the direction of that vehicle when it was traveling towards Culebra, to the point where it also made a left turn to go westbound on Culebra. After that point, I wasn't able to see anything else. So the information that I'm putting out, I'm hoping that everybody that's a part is following.
An objection on responsive narrative.
Next question.
What's going through your mind, if anything, at this time?
Relevant, Your Honor.
It's part of the investigation, Your Honor.
Overruled.
So I'm just hoping that somebody can get to that vehicle. I've done enough surveillance.
An object to non-responsive, Your Honor.
Let's hit the next question.
You talked to the jury. You told the jury you were the eye. What does that mean?
So the eye means that you're actually watching that location that are what we call the target locations. Yeah.
And you said the eye can't leave. What does that mean?
Yeah. So the fact is that we don't know for sure who's in that vehicle, and so there might be somebody else that could arrive to those two locations. And if I was to leave the spot where I'm at, there's nobody that's watching that location, so you're gonna miss something. So the whole goal to that person is to just stay there. You can't leave.
And did you stay there?
I did.
And at some point, were you relieved, or did something occur before you were relieved, or can you tell us what happened after you saw that white Buick leave and you stayed there as the eye?
Yeah, so we had our helicopter Eagle up. We had other officers around the area. They were able to locate the vehicle. They followed the vehicle all the way, I believe, to 15, 16.
Personal knowledge, Your Honor.
Response?
Your Honor, this is part of the investigation and he's monitoring his radio.
You can
It's also
establish.
a present sense impression.
You got to establish a little more than that.
Were you still part of the monitoring of where the defendant Otis McKane was at this point?
Yes.
And are you hearing over the radio that other people are acting? And when I say other people, other units of law enforcement, whether it's the San Antonio Police Department or DPS, were they acting or on the information you were giving them?
Yes.
It's a leading, Your Honor.
You can ask the next question.
Did you maintain the eye or did you leave and participate in any other things for the rest of that day?
I stayed where I was at. I maintained the eye.
Did any other unit show up at that location during the rest of your shift? And by that location, I mean 1230 Lombrano and 1236 Lombrano.
Yeah, there was other units that after everything took place, they went back to those two apartments.
Okay. And were you present when other units showed up at those apartments?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And at this point, to your own personal knowledge, was that after Otis McKane was taken into custody?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And were you present when searches were done of his apartment and 1230 Lombrano?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you remember what units came in to conduct these searches of those two apartments?
I want to say we had some from street crimes. We had some from homicide. We had some from SWAT.
Why would SWAT have been involved?
I think just not knowing what's inside that location and you know who could maybe harm these other people that are trying to go inside these apartments to retrieve evidence.
Did you take part in any of the searches?
No, I stayed outside.
Sergeant, that's all I have. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I may have some questions.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I have no question, Sergeant.
All right, you're excused. Thank you. Right, members of the jury, let's take a short break, about 10 minutes.
All rise for the jury.
you. You got a little chocolate in there?
A little chocolate.
You had some bananas? You had some?
I had, when I get past a certain point, I'm like, well, I gotta save this for banana bread now.
You have to.
I don't want to go to waste.
Yeah, I mean that's when they're the most sweet. You have to use them when they're.
Yes. So I just let them sit there and rot a few days, and then I'll use them, and
Yeah, I've been
y'all
very
benefit.
lucky. Been very lucky. The last few days I've been eating better.
Well, I haven't.
I've been getting exercise. I exercise extensively since the trial started.
Yeah,
So it's been good.
I've been trying to stay on top of it too.
It's been good. I had one meeting this morning, and then where they gave us tacos. So
Oh, nice.
I'm feeling good.
Yeah, I need some real food because I had a little bar right when I came in here.
Yeah,
All right for the jury? A bottle of that, that's it.
yeah, it's hard to do. All right, welcome back, members of the jury. State, call your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor, state called David Pendleton.
Good night, sir. I'm going to swear you in. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this trial will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right. Make sure everybody can hear you. If you could introduce yourself to the jury and spell your name for the court reporter, please.
Yes. My name is David Pendleton. That's Pendleton. And I'm a firearms examiner at the Bexar County Criminal Investigation Laboratory. But most people just call it the crime lab.
All right, State.
How long have you worked in the crime lab?
A little over 15 years.
And can you please describe to the jury what type of training you've received to be able to examine firearms?
The majority of our training is done within the laboratory itself. We do have outside training when available. We're also yearly proficiency tested by an outside organization. I'm also a member of the Association of Firearm and Toolmark Examiners, and I'm certified in the area of firearms identification by that organization.
And is the Bexar County Crime Lab, is that an accredited lab?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
And can you please describe to the jury what tool marks are?
Tool marks are left by the processing of making a tool, the finishing processes specifically. The grinding, the sanding, the cutting, things of this nature, drilling. Those processes leave minute marks on the bearing surfaces of those pieces. When they're later assembled into tools, in this case firearms, so a firearm is a tool, those markings can be transposed to softer materials such as cartridge cases and bullets. From that, we can extrapolate if a cartridge case or a bullet was fired from a particular firearm.
Have you testified many times about firearms here in Bexar County?
Yes, ma'am, maybe 70 or plus or minus.
Do you testify in any other counties as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, surrounding counties or afar?
Webb County and Wilson County.
Have you ever testified in federal court about firearms examination?
No, ma'am, I have not.
So each tool ends up with a specific type of marking. Is that what you're explaining to us?
Yes, ma'am.
So does each firearm have a unique imprint they leave on what goes through them?
Yes, ma'am.
can you describe how this, like a firearm works in general?
Yes. If you don't mind, I'm going to use this demonstrative aid, and I apologize. I know it's a little cartoonish, but we tend to look at this and we'll call it certain things like ammo, a round, a bullet. The reason that's a little incorrect is I want to specify that this is what we call an unfired cartridge. The reason we do that is because there's actually 4 components of this cartridge. There is the main body, which we call the cartridge case. Inside is the gunpowder. We also have the primer, which is its ignition source. And then we have the projectile, or rather the bullet, that is expelled from it. So when we're talking about items of evidence, when we're referring to cartridge cases, we're referring to this item, bullets, this item. And the way this would basically work in a firearm is when it's loaded into a firearm, the firing pin will strike the primer, which will cause a small explosion. That explosion will ignite the gunpowder, which will combust, producing gases that will cause the cartridge case in a semi-automatic firearm to extract and eject, and it will cause the bullet to enter the barrel and exit the barrel.
So you mentioned earlier that your lab does proficiency testing on all of you. Can you describe what that entails?
Yes, it's basically a test that's given to us by an outside organization where we do not know the answer. We examine it, come to our conclusions, and then we submit those results, and then they tell us if we were correct.
If you were provided cartridge casings, fired cartridge casings, could you match that to a specific gun if you had the gun?
Yes, ma'am, potentially.
And how do you do that?
What we do is, the first thing we would do is we would test fire the firearm, and we would collect cartridge cases and bullet tests. We would then compare those under what we call a comparison microscope, essentially to where we can look at 2 items side by side. We would look for individual markings, which will be left on the bullet or cartridge case from the firing. And then, once we determine that there is sufficient agreement of these markings, we will attempt to compare them to any evidence, questioned items. The first thing we would do is we would look at the class characteristics. These are things that are very general in nature, like the caliber, the shape of the firing pin, the number of landing grooves on a bullet.
Can I stop you there?
I'm sorry.
What are lands and grooves?
Yes. Lands and grooves are in the barrel of a firearm, and they're there for a specific reason. Think of them as a spiral channel. If you were to look at it from a cross section, it would look almost like a candy cane. The reason they're there is because a bullet, if you don't mind, a bullet is an oblong object. So I like to use the analogy of a football. If a kicker kicks it, it tends to tumble over on itself. However, if a quarterback puts a spin on it, it has a spiral and a trajectory and potentially reaches its target. So the rifling in the barrel is there to make the bullet spin. And because that rifling is there and how it's made tends to leave impressions that we can use to identify whether that bullet was fired from a particular firearm.
And say you don't have a firearm, can you take pieces of a bullet, cartridge casings or otherwise, and compare them to each other and determine if they were in fact fired from the same firearm?
Yes, ma'am.
And how do you go about doing that?
The same process, minus having a firearm to compare them to. We would compare these under the comparison microscope. First, we would look for the class characteristics, are they the same caliber, things of that nature. Then we would look for individual characteristics. Think of it as the fingerprint, if you will. If we find sufficient agreement of marks reproducing, then we can come to the conclusion that they were fired in the same firearm, or perhaps a separate firearm.
Does it happen where the same class of weapon Well, they each have different characteristics of rifling in Lansing groups.
Did you mean the same make and model of firearm?
Yes.
The same make and model of firearm will have similar class characteristics. The individual characteristics, however, will be different.
Were you asked to do a comparison analysis on evidence found in the capital murder of Benjamin Marconi?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
And was that under SAPD case number 16253595?
Could you repeat that, please?
16253595.
Yes, ma'am.
And at the crime lab, do y'all assign it a unique number to the case that's different from the SAPD number?
Yes, ma'am. Every item of evidence that comes into the laboratory that's associated with an agency number receives a unique criminal investigation laboratory number to coincide with it. We call that the CIL number. This is a unique number for any evidence that's going to be looked under that corresponding agency.
Can I approach your honor?
Yes.
I'm going to show you items of evidence that are already entered into evidence. States Exhibit 100, 102, 103, and 108. Do you recognize these?
Yes, ma'am.
And how do you recognize them?
I notate the CIL number, the date that I opened the package, my initials, and an item number that I would have assigned each individual item.
I would also like to show you States Exhibit 162, which is not in evidence as of yet. Do you recognize this?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And how do you recognize that?
Once again, the CIL number, the date I opened it, my initials, and an item number that I assigned it.
At this time, State would move to enter States Exhibit 162 into evidence. Use it later, Your Honor.
Okay.
States Exhibit 162. So, as we look at this, States Exhibit 100 is a bullet casings, a spent shell casing, as is States Exhibit 102. And then States Exhibit 103 and 108 were like the projectiles that were found in Detective Marconi's vehicle. Were you able to perform comparisons on these, and can you please tell us about it?
Yes, ma'am, I did. With the cartridge cases, I compared them to each other and was determining that they were fired in the same firearm. I also compared the two bullets to each other. My result on that was inconclusive. In other words, I couldn't exclude them because they had the same class. They were the same general things like the caliber, the number of landing grooves of the rifling. However, there weren't enough individual markings on those projectiles to make an identification.
And so projectiles being fired from a weapon, they're usually going through things or getting embedded in things, correct?
They can, yes.
And does that alter markings on them?
It could, yes. That is more than likely not the situation for a non-identification in this case, but yes, that can happen.
And so can you please describe to us, I know you wrote a report, what comparisons did you find in the two shell casings?
They were fired from the same firearm.
What led you to that conclusion or opinion?
Once again, they had the same class characteristics and a sufficient agreement of individual characteristics.
And what would those be in these particular shell casings?
Go back to this. The areas that we're going to look at is called the breech face and firing pin area. And basically what this is, when the cartridge is in the firearm, it's resting on the back side in the slide, what we call the breech face. There's a small hole that the firing pin sticks through, which we call the aperture. And so when the firing pin strikes the primer, it's going to leave an impression. Okay. Then also when the combustion of gases forces the cartridge case back against the slide, or excuse me, breech face, it's also going to have impressed evidence and also sliding and scraping as it's being ejected from the firearm. Those markings will be what we use to potentially identify a cartridge case.
And can you tell the jury what type of firearm is that consistent with the casings?
Yes, ma'am. When we look at class characteristics and we don't have a firearm, in many cases, just from the class characteristics, we can give an indication of what type of firearm you're looking for, or should have fired this firearm, or excuse me, this item. In these two cartridge cases, the firing pin impression, its shape, is generally fired by three manufacturers: a Glock pistol, an older model Smith & Wesson pistol, and Springfield Armory pistol.
And both of these appear, in your opinion, to be fired by the same weapon?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you provided a weapon in this case for CIL 17-00034?
No, ma'am. A firearm was not submitted.
I want to go back to the projectiles. Can you please tell us why specifically you couldn't compare these two to determine if they were fired from the same weapon?
Yes, ma'am. Well, they were actually compared to each other, but the type of rifling present, if you look at the processes of how rifling is made or how a barrel is made, there's drilling processes, there's reaming, there's cutting of the grooves. Most of this is done by removing metals and leaves sharp edges, things of that nature inside the barrel, which will help leave individual markings on the bearing surface of the bullet. In this type of firearm, the rifling isn't cut. It's what's called hammer forged. So in other words, the interior of the barrel is drilled, honed, and highly polished. So there are almost no markings left from any cutting left.
Any what left?
Markings left from any cuttings left. Then a mandrel is put inside, and it's literally they hammer it or forge it to make the shape of the rifling, and then it's pulled out. So rather than having any sharp edges that the barrel can slide, the bullet can slide across, it's better term would be to be it's squeezed through and doesn't leave a lot of individual markings on the bullet itself.
Were you able to make a determination if those two projectiles, what type of firearm they were fired out of or were consistent with?
Yes, this type of rifling is used in a number of manufacturers, but the most common would be Glock, Car Arms, and Heckler and Koch.
Mayor Prochnow,
Yes.
on State's Exhibit 162, you had said you see your markings, you dated the CIL. Did you find this to have any evidentiary value?
No, ma'am. It was basically a small fragment of bullet jacket. Bullet jacket is basically, think of it as the skin of a bullet. Most bullets are made of lead, the interior, the core, but lead tends to melt when it gets heated, and it tends to foul barrels. So because of that, manufacturers put a metal skin, which we call the jacket, around the bullet. Sometimes this is brass, copper, it could be steel, but in examinations you will find that the pieces of jacket actually separate. This was a very small piece of jacket. It didn't have any markings that were able to be identified to anything, so it was really of no value for comparison.
So being so tiny, there was not even enough of a surface area to make any assessment of that little fragment.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll pass it with you, John.
All right. Thank you. You're excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes. Right, members of the jury, as I told you when I swore you in, jury trials really do tend to take a life of their own, so it's really hard to get the timing down right. There's a lot of coordination that goes along with that. As such, we're going to go ahead and take a lunch break now. Come back no later than 1 o'clock. All right, we'll see you then.
All right for the jury? You may be seated.
I'm just trying to do better about notating numbers, because